Hello, everybody, and welcome to my Boomer Buddies podcast, where we tell it like it was and is. I'm Rick Reed, your host, and today we've got a very special guest. It's someone I've known since high school, and he's agreed to come on today to talk about one of his special talents. And I was always chicken to try his skill, and I'm confessing that right now. We'll get into that. Scott, welcome to my Boomer Buddies podcast. How you doing? You doing okay?
I'm doing good. How about you, Rick?
Good. Let's talk about that special skill that Scott Peterson has. He is an actor. He's been in many productions throughout the years. And the first question I have for you, Scott, is give us a little background about yourself and how did you get the acting bug?
Oh boy, I think it starts out when you're a kid and you do lots of pretend, right? And I was always pretending, like in grade school. A bunch of my buddies, we played Batman on the playground and we all had our separate characters. It just kind of started from there. Junior high was my first real stint I did was one of the elves or whatever you would call it in The Hobbit. But I never got to even go on because I got pneumonia the night that they did the show, so I couldn't even start with that. But then I did other little shows and stuff like that in junior high school. Led into high school. The first real part I had in high school was Ebenezer Scrooge. I did that much to everybody else's dismay. They were like, "What is this freshman getting a main part for?" But that's the way it goes, you know. It's how the director wants it.
You must have had the talent, though, Scott, as a freshman to get that part. And I must say that where we went to high school, they had a great theater department.
They did. And that's the funniest thing is I didn't really end up having that many parts in high school because of the competition. I did a lot of behind the stage kind of work for a good portion of the time. It wasn't really until I went to University of Wisconsin River Falls. They had a casting call for their fall show, and I tried out and I got one of the major parts. So my very first role was I played John Thoreau in a show called The Night Thoreau Spent in Jail. The interesting thing about that show is that it's also the first time that I died on stage. Every performance, there would be somebody that shot me in the back, and so I'd have to flail and fall, and very dramatic, of course, but you do what you got to do.
How did you get your inspiration to die the
I don't know. All I knew is that it was painful because I had to fall forward. You had to do it in such a way that, and hit the stage and it was wood, you know, it's like, uh, yeah, it was rather tough, but I mean, you learn how to fall acting wise. They patted me a little bit too, so it was okay.
UW River Falls is where you kind of hit your stride in acting. This being the holiday season, did you have seasonal Christmas type parts while you were in college, or did that come later on? I know you did
Yeah,
community
I
too.
did. They did a Christmas Carol a couple times, and both times I wanted to do Scrooge. That was really I like character parts. And the only thing was is that both times I got cast as the young Scrooge that's like, 20 something. So I had the same role twice, which was fine, but it's small and short and that's the way it goes.
And that's when Scrooge was young and nice Scrooge, right?
He was a clerk, and it was the whole thing where he fell in love with Belle, and then it speeds up to um, there's a couple scenes. The last scene, of course, is when he breaks up with Belle, and she goes, "Oh, you love money more than me. I hope you're happy in the life you've chosen." And so that leads, of course, to him being the Scrooge that everybody knows and hates.
Okay, so you played Scrooge, young Scrooge, a couple of times, and you played Bob Cratchit, right?
Yeah, that's more recent. I spent 9 years doing community theater at the Phipps in Hudson, Wisconsin here. What was it? God, it's almost 8 or 9 years ago now already. But yeah, I always wanted to play Bob Cratchit, never could. I tried out for this one and apparently nailed it because I got it.
Yeah, I remember on Facebook seeing that you had parts there. And I never got from the Twin Cities over to Hudson to see you. And it's a regret that I have, Scott. It really is because
Ah,
I thought about it quite a bit. So you also had a very good part in It's a Wonderful Life.
Uncle Billy. Yeah, it's classic character. Every time I watch that film, I would be like, someday I want to be Uncle Billy. I want to play Uncle Billy. That's a great part. He has lots of fun, but yet he has lots of remorse. And then he basically goes a little crazy. But one of the best pieces, and I think I gave you a photo of this too, but the interaction with Mr. Potter in the bank. And it's like, well, hello, good morning, Mr. Potter. What's the news? Oh, that's right. Harry Bailey wins Congressional Medal of Honor. Well, Mr. Potter, you can't keep those Bailey boys down now, can you? And then, of
That
course, he hands over the newspaper to Potter, which has the money in it, and causes all the trouble.
I have to tell you, Scott, that is probably my favorite holiday movie. We watch it every year around Christmas time. Get a bowl of chili, and it's just a tradition in our household. And that scene breaks my heart, especially later when George are going through the slushy snow in the street trying to find that money because it's the end of the world if they don't find it. And by the way, that $8,000 would be worth almost $100,000 in
Yeah,
today's money.
yeah.
But that is just heartbreaking. And it's what a great character part Uncle Billy was to play.
Yeah, it was interesting for me because at the same time I was doing that show, and we were only scheduled to have, I think we had 12 performances. Because of popular demand, we had to add a 13th.
Oh, nice.
And the only thing was is that they made it a 2 o'clock performance. And as you know, I also played Santa for Shriners. And it was the same time period, same weekend, same everything.
Ooh,
So I had to quickly drive back to Hudson from the Twin Cities. Barely got there in time, whipped everything off, and got into the makeup for Uncle Billy, and with like 5 minutes to spare, jumped in.
that brings me to a couple of questions.
Okay,
Being an outsider, never acted. You theater jocks were cool.
jocks. I like that, theater jocks.
Yeah. I was a
Jock,
jock, I
jock.
guess you'd say, but you were a theater jock, and I always thought, how cool. But how did you remember lines? How do you do that?
Ah, it's repetition. It's repetition and repetition and repetition. Thing is, you get a script, and then what I do is I highlight, like in yellow or whatever, my lines. And
Okay.
then I would, first line, you'd say it, and then the next line, you'd add to it, and you'd add to it. And so you'd go through the show basically many, many times. You had to do it, reading through it, because otherwise you wouldn't have continuity and you wouldn't know exactly where you're at. But it's just plain repetition.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you, when you get boomer older like us, it's the last couple shows for me were pretty tough.
I remember my brother Randy was 3 grades behind me, and he had gotten the part of Tevye
Yep.
Fiddler and Wolf in high school, and I wasn't around, but I guess he had my siblings and mom read lines, and he got through it. But I came home from college and watched him, and I went, "How did he do that?" And wow, he's a star. I had no clue. I have so much respect for what you all do. Have you ever had a prop that was supposed to be there, but it didn't show up? And how did you get around that?
Ah. Yeah, I did a show called Making God Laugh. It was at the Phipps, and what was interesting was my character was supposed to be like 35. He was a former jock, and at the beginning of the show, I wore a mullet, and it the show would go through like about every 10 years of time or so, and it would evolve. It started back like the 70s, then you had the 80s, and then the 90s, and the very last part of it, we were doing the whole Prince's 1999 music and stuff, and it was pretty crazy. But here I was playing a 35-year-old, and I think at the time I was like 50 plus or something. It was really strenuous because it was like, because I was flying all over the place because I was just a crazy character. But there's a scene at the very beginning where I'm supposed to come into the house, say hi to my dad, and come on in, and I'm bringing a Christmas gift in, and I do this several times during the show, but this one is I'm supposed to bring in a bottle of wine, and I got out on stage, and I'm talking to a person that's supposed to play my sister, and she's going, "Well, you brought the wine, didn't you?" And I'm like, "I forgot the wine backstage." And I was like, "Oh shit." And so I backpedaled a little bit, added a few lines. Everybody was a little, huh, that's weird. And then all of a sudden another character came in and was like, "I think you left this back on the stoop out front."
You know
I
what?
was
That
like, "Well, I had a few before I got here, so."
nice recovery. Did you ever watch the Carol Burnett show?
Oh yeah.
It's amazing the amount of sketches they would do on short notice, and they're doing satire of a lot of the classic acting roles in movie history. And that was always fun. And that sounds like something that they would have done on their show, ad libbed to recover.
Exactly. I mean, there's nothing else you can do. If most of their stuff was in front of an audience,
Hmm.
same as plays, you can't stop and go, "Oh, I forgot something. We have to do another take." Doesn't fly. They would just muddle through it, add to it, and it was like some of the funniest stuff they ever did. I mean, Tim Conway would crack Harvey Korman up so many times that he was just puddle laughing on the floor that they couldn't get through the scene. It was like, but Tim Conway stood there just deadpan. "Oh, that's the way you're going to be, is it? Oh, okay."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun, but I'll tell you, it really messes with the other actors, especially stage plays.
Understudies. Tell me a little bit about understudies. Were you ever one?
Nope, never was. Most of the stuff I did, we didn't have understudies for anything because it was college plays and it was community theater. And community theater, you can barely get enough people sometimes to actually try out for the stuff. And it's
Hmm.
mostly women that try out.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of times I was in shows where women end up playing guy parts.
Gotcha.
So it yeah, no understudies. There's a couple times where I wish I did have one, but there's a couple times which I was in a show. One of my last shows was called The Red Box, and we did it as a murder mystery. And also, there was a lot of pressure on us because it was the first time the play was done, period. I mean, we got the rights to do it, And actually, the playwright came to one of the performances.
Wow.
And so there was so much, and we didn't know, we knew he was going to come, but we didn't know when he was going to come.
Oh,
And I had the lead role. I played the main detective, which was a combination of, all of the classic detective guys. I mean, a bit Columbo, a bit just everybody else. Matlock, you just meld them all together. It was a challenging role. Yeah, there was a couple times I forgot my lines. And once again, I just kind of had to make it up and get through it. But it was one that you just sunk your teeth into. And because he had to unravel the whole show for you, I couldn't really mess it up. It had to be strong and forceful, and there was one scene where this one guy was going, I didn't have anything to do with it. And I just murder him with words. It's just like, yeah, I'm going around and he's sitting on a couch and I'm going to every edge of the couch and going, yeah, I'm going to get you good. And and so we got done after the show. We'd go out to the lobby and we'd greet everybody. It's something that I did with almost every performance. We'd go out and greet all the guests that came, and so we're going through and everybody's shaking hands and great job and everything. And I get to this guy and go, he took both his hands in mine and go. He said that was exactly the way I wrote it.
nice.
And I was like, huh? He says, I'm the playwright. And it was like the most greatest gift anybody has ever given me as an actor was, especially the playwright. He's going, that's the way I wrote the character. That's the way I wanted it. You nailed it. That was probably the best part I ever had.
Have you ever had stage fright?
Yeah. The only time that really happened to me is when you could see the audience. Most of the time, you have bright lights in your eyes, and if you look out into the audience, you're going to get the stage lights in your eyes. But you basically just pretend that there's people there, but you don't really, concentrate on that they're there unless you can see them.
Mhm.
Um, the only time that it really hit me hard was I did a show which was not your typical show. It was a show that was put together in a bar, basically. And they ended up writing it and then producing it. And now it's done kind of all over the country. It was called Flanagan's Wake.
Mm.
And it takes place in an Irish pub. And the thing is it has a script, but most of the show, you see the audience. They're there. It was difficult for me because I didn't really even try out for this show. I got it by reputation. And I was actually working at the state fair selling tickets at the time, and I knew they were doing it, and I called during my break and said, is anything open for this show? And they said, well, we've got two roles, and I don't know if you want either one of them. One is you play the main character, and that person is in drag, and the other one is a priest. And I went, well, I could probably do a priest. So that's when I got the role of uh, the good father. And the thing was is that it was part play, part improv. So a lot of times you would react off to what the audience was thinking or saying, or then once in a while you'd pick somebody out of the audience, and we would have scenes where we would sing drinking songs, and so we'd haul some people out of the audience and make them sing Danny Boy with us, or we'd have ones where we'd dance, and we would drag people out for that too. And people didn't exactly in this area were like, huh? Because a good portion of our audience is in Hudson, people over 60. So you'd have to pick out people that you knew were going to get out, could do it, and get back to their chair without hurting themselves.
What was your favorite role that you ever played, Scott?
Ah, boy. Character wise, I've got to say, was Santa Claus.
Hmm. And why
I,
is that?
I did it twice for Shriners Hospitals for Children, Twin Cities. I worked there. And it just came about one time they were like, the Santa they were going to have bowed out because he got sick. And very much like Miracle on 34th Street, basically. But I said, well, I can do it if you get me a costume and stuff. I can do it. And the first time, it was very scary because I didn't know what to expect. And at the same time, I had great plans for my makeup to try to look as authentic as possible. Ugh. Many times while I was sitting in the Santa chair, my beard started to come off.
Hmm.
And I had this cadre of elves that would help me, right? And so I had this one that would sit on my lap and just go, "Oh, that's okay, Santa," and push the beard back into place. So it was like but oh my God, the warmth that kids feel for Santa, you felt that. It just oozes from these kids, and these kids are having such crises themselves, that they're dealing with I don't know how many different kinds of illness or problems with their limbs, or it really gets you that you basically start choking up every time. And they were going like, they don't have to sit on your lap, or they told me that in advance. And I was
Mhm.
like, nope, nope. I was like, they can sit on my lap if they damn well want to.
Hmm.
And the parents would be in front of me and they were crying.
Oh man.
It was just so emotional. But it's like the belief that would come out of those kids was like, it was fantastic. And you'd have to tell yourself to stay in that role. Don't break, don't feel bad or anything. Just keep with it. And the things they would ask for, is like, what do you want for Christmas? Well, I want a new wheelchair. If that doesn't kick you in the pants, I'll tell you, it really did. And so I got through it. It was draining, to say the least. The guys that go out there and do these department store Santas and stuff like that, they earn every dollar that they get,
Hmm.
because not only do you have to deal with the hot makeup and the hot costume, and you have to deal with lights on you, and then you have all these kids that are sitting on your lap, and yeah. And the side note, yeah, I had a kidlet that let loose and ended up peeing on me, so
Yeah.
I was baptized that way as well. A lot of them come up and they're afraid, and I had to tell myself, just relax. And I was, drawing on the Santa characters I knew. I mean, the best Santa character out there was Edmund Gwynn.
Hmm.
Edmund Gwynn was the Santa in Miracle on 34th Street.
Yeah.
I mean, that I just kept thinking, Edmund Gwynn, think Edmund Gwynn, think. And it just kind of oozed out. The second time I played it was much easier because I decided in advance that I was going to grow the actual beard so I wouldn't have an issue again. So I had to grow that thing for like 4 weeks before it looked Santa-ish.
Sounds rewarding. That's an outstanding role for you. I'm going to ask you one more question, Scott, before we have to leave. All-time favorite actor? Who?
Leonard Nimoy. I'm a trekker. I admit it. I had a friend that back in the late 80s, he won a contest to go to Hollywood with a friend, and it was a contest that revolved around Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. And so we got to go, I got picked to go with him.
Nice.
And we went there, and they put us up in West Hollywood, and great food and great accommodations. And then they took us to Paramount Studios, and we visited all the remaining pieces of the Enterprise, and they had a special screening of Star Trek 3, and then we had lunch with Leonard Nimoy. You got to meet him and sign autograph and stuff like that. And he was having a terrible cold, terrible cold. And I was like, dude, what are you doing out here? Well, it's contractual. I got to do it, whatever. And I said, have you tried hot lemon and honey? And he goes, my mom used to do that. I said, you probably should try that. So that's kind of my connection to Leonard Nimoy, but he's like one of the greatest I've ever met.
Scott Peterson, actor, friend. Thanks for being on my Boomer Buddies podcast.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it. And to those of you watching, please like, share, and subscribe. Any audio app, please like 5 stars. Scott comes on, he opens up his heart for us, and you can see his personality in there. What a good actor he is. Thanks, Scott. I really, really appreciate you coming on.
No
And
problem.
for my Boomer Buddies podcast, I'm Rick Reed. And for Scott Peterson, until next time, we'll see you around the block.
Well, hello, good morning, Mr. Potter. What's the news? Oh, that's right. Harry Bailey wins Congressional Medal of Honor. Well, Mr. Potter, you can't keep those Bailey boys down now, can you?